When we began working on the Golden Compass game, it was clear very early in the process that one of the most compelling characters was Yorick Byrnison, a huge, armored, talking polar bear. The designers immediately set out to devise gameplay that would take advantage of this amazing character, but as the animation team producer, I was more concerned with how we were going to handle making him move in a way that felt realistic to the player. The answer seemed fairly obvious. We need to see real polar bears for reference, but where? We had already decided to do all of the animation in the game by hand, which was a good thing considering it wasn't very likely that we'd find a polar bear willing to put on a mocap suit for us. I then spoke with a couple of Hollywood animal trainers who told me that almost no one even tries working with these polar giants due to their immense size and power. For the most part, the polar bears seen in zoos tend to look far different from their wild cousins due to the warmer temperatures. So to get truly accurate reference, we'd need to use wild polar bears, and that meant that someone was going to have to go out and get the footage. That someone was me. Churchill, Manitoba, Canada is known as the polar bear capital of the world. Large groups of bears congregate there during the fall as they wait for the ice pack to form. Once that happens, they head out onto the bay and spend the rest of the winter hunting seals. But until that happens, they're stuck on land waiting, which makes them much easier to photograph. I flew the 1,540 miles from Shiny Studios in Southern California north to Winnipeg, where I joined a group that was headed out to see bears on the tundra. We then took another flight that took us the remaining 624 miles north to Churchill. There are regular expeditions at this time of year that take people out in tundra buggies. We spent the days riding around the tundra looking at bears and then returned at night to the lodge, which is essentially a train of buggies strung together and parked on the shores of Hudson Bay. Kevin, our guide for the trip, passed on a lot of information not only about the bears but lots of other wildlife as well. There are a lot more animals than you might think up in the far north. In addition to the polar bears, there are many different bird species present, including ptarmigans, snow buntings, gyrfalcon, and snowy owls. We also saw a few Arctic hares and some Arctic foxes. We also got word that there had been some tundra wolves spotted near town as well. I learned many interesting things about polar bears on this trip. For example, the bears around Churchill fast for much of the year during the warmer months when the ice pack is melted. They can only hunt seals during the winter and need to eat enough during that time that they're able to survive throughout the spring and summer while they wait on dry land for the ice to return. The female bears have an even tougher time of it. It's during this time that they give birth and raise their cubs. For the first few months of their lives, the cubs survive solely on their mother's milk, which she generates from her fat stores without taking in any additional food herself. If they don't get enough to eat during the winter hunting season, they won't give birth at all. When I returned to Shiny, I presented a slideshow of some of what I'd seen in Churchill to a group of artists and animators. The visual effects artists were interested in the footage of the swirling, blowing snow, the concept artists in the anatomy of the bears, and the animators in how the bears moved during their various daily activities. After compressing the videos down to a more manageable size, the animators were then able to view the video in one window while working in Motion Builder in another. This fast A/B switching allowed them to compare the Churchill bears with their digital in-game counterparts and capture the nuances of their movement. I spent 3 days out on the tundra shooting reference material. Along the way, I got the opportunity to talk to a National Geographic photographer who came out with us for a day, and also got to check out the rig they used for the polar bear cam, where footage of bears is streamed live on the internet all day during polar bear season. We saw bears wrestling, sleeping, running, playing, grooming themselves, and a myriad of other things, and it was all captured on tape to bring back to the team at Shiny to make sure that the bears you see in-game stay true to the spirit of their Arctic cousins.
Polar bears aren't the only animals featured in the world of the Golden Compass. All the characters have demons who take the forms of various animals, ranging from Lord Asriel's snow leopard to Mrs. Coulter's golden monkey to Pantalaimmon's favoured ermine form. We needed to have lots of these represented in the game, and again, we wanted them to both look and move realistically. Fortunately, we didn't have to go very far to get these references. Just north of Los Angeles is the Wildlife Way Station, a non-profit refuge for native, wild, and exotic animals. These animals come from all over the world and from many different situations. Throughout the way station's history, educating the public about wildlife has been a priority. The overall goal is to preserve wildlife and cease its abuse and mistreatment. Some of the animals residing at the way station are habituated to be educational animals, to promote animal and man coexisting and learning from each other. One of our producers contacted them and arranged for us to visit the facility with a small video crew. We spent a couple of days getting footage of all sorts of different animals in motion, walking, climbing, running, turning, pouncing, and more. In some cases, when an exact match for a particular demon was unavailable, we would make do with a similar animal. For example, a ferret was used in place of the ermine, and several breeds of monkey were used as reference for Mrs. Coulter's demon. In many cases, we were able to film the animals outside of their enclosures in a more natural backdrop. These videos were then brought back to the Shiny offices, where they were digitized for the animators, who by this time were very happy to see something besides polar bears. There were some interesting moments during the course of the shoot. Anything can and usually does happen when working with animals, and this was no exception. The American black bears were in semi-hibernation and refused to cooperate at all. Hawks fly deceptively fast, and it was a challenge to keep them in frame. One proposed move, an uphill walk over an obstacle by an African lioness, was nixed when we realized she was heavy enough that she'd probably just crush it completely. Since the obstacle in question was a truck belonging to one of our cameramen, this was probably for the best. On another occasion, several of the crew were caught off guard when one of the big cats deviated from the original path and bounded straight at the cameraman instead. In the end, it all paid off. Armed with this reference footage, the animators were able to really bring the demons of the world of the Golden Compass to life.